This Scream Queen won our hearts by beating up vampires and screaming at slashers. In the late 90s, if there was something that was kinda scary and kind of sexy, Sarah Michelle Gellar would have something to do with it. Gellar slayed both the television and film industry with blockbusting hits. She was everywhere, whether it be next to Scooby-Doo at the theaters, or next to her Scooby-Doo co-star at the wedding chapel. She was America's sweetheart, who helped reimagine what it means to be an action hero. But did this talented actress have just a few too many box office bombs in her filmography? Were the real-life bloodsuckers of Hollywood too much for Sarah? Or did she just find a real-life happily ever after with a real-life prince? Okay, gang, let's solve the mystery of what the f*** happened to Sarah Michelle Gellar.
It's my goal to entertain the world through artistic expression. Through art, I shall serve my country.
Before we begin, I just want to say thanks for watching. Pretty please like, share, and subscribe, and click that bell to get those notifications if you're into this kind of YouTube video content. Now it's time to get back to the show. But to truly understand what the f*** happened to Sarah Michelle Gellar, we must begin at the beginning, and the beginning began when she was born on her birthday, Long Island, New York, 1977. At just 4 years old, Gellar got banned from McDonald's after appearing in a Burger King commercial where she says she only eats the king. McDonald's would sue Burger King and name the 4-year-old Gellar in the lawsuit. In 2004, Sarah Michelle Gellar actually spoke about this legal fiasco. She said that the banning was actually difficult because a lot of her friends at that age would have birthday parties at McDonald's, and she could not attend them. Do you think they really would have called security if a little Sarah Michelle Gellar walked in? I don't know.
Unbelievable.
Then she would get a chance to audition for the TV movie Invasion of Privacy in 1983, where she impressed everyone by not just knowing her lines, but the lines of her co-stars. I picture her as that little girl from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you know? As well as small roles in the films Over the Brooklyn Bridge in 1984 and High Stakes in 1989. In that year, 1989, Gellar would co-host the very short-lived teen girl talk show called Girl Talk.
Sarah! Oh, hi. Welcome to Girl Talk's TV debut. Sarah. I just did all that.
Sarah would follow that up by appearing in the miniseries A Woman Named Jackie in 1991, which would go on to win an Emmy for Outstanding Limited Series. Gellar would then be nominated for 2 Young Artist Awards for appearing in the short-lived teen serial Swan's Crossing in 1992. Her performance there allowed her to be cast in 1993 on the soap opera All My Children. And after 2 years of soap operaing, she would win a Daytime Emmy Award for her performance, and decided to call it quits while she was on top, leaving the world of the soap opera behind to pursue other acting opportunities, with less soap and less opera.
You saw what Eric and her stooges did to me in there? My grandmother just died, and Eric won't let me grieve for her. It's not fair. She has no right. She has no right at all.
After appearing in the Disney TV film Beverly Hills Family Robinson, she would land an audition for a new TV series called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Premiering in March 1997, the show immediately struck a chord with audiences and critics alike, with Entertainment Weekly naming Buffy as one of the 100 greatest female characters in the history of television. The show would run for a total of 144 episodes over 7 seasons, with Gellar winning 5 Teen Choice Awards and a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was groundbreaking, fun, thought-provoking, and original, perfectly mixing genres that also featured some amazing fight choreography, and it was just fun. TV shows used to be fun. This wild and ridiculous premise just struck a chord in our pop culture and made us all forget about the movie that it was based on. And of course, the skills of Sarah were a major reason why this show was so massively successful. In recent years, the cast members of the show have made allegations of abuse against show creator Joss Whedon. In response to these abuse allegations, Gellar expressed support for her co-stars and said although she is proud to have her name associated with the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, she does not wish to have her name forever associated with Joss.
What's that do?
That year, 1997, would also see Gellar appear in two genre-defying slasher films, Scream 2 and I Know What You Did Last Summer, where she would meet her future husband, Freddie Prinze Jr. Gellar was the last of the main cast to be hired. The filmmakers said that they liked that Gellar had warmth to her, but could also still come across as being a stone-cold biatch. Opening on October 17th, 1997, I Know What You Did Last Summer would take first place for 3 weeks in a row, ultimately finishing out its run with $126 million worldwide off of just a $17 million budget. However, critics called it a by-the-numbers slasher, and unfairly compared it to the much better Scream. But just because Scream is better doesn't mean that I Know What You Did Last Summer is bad. Speaking of Scream, Gellar would also appear in the 1997 sequel, Scream 2, the second Scream, playing a sorority girl. Gellar agreed to star in the film without even reading the script because she was a big fan of the first Scream, Scream 1. This turned out to be an excellent decision because this slasher sequel would earn an impressive $172.4 million off a $24 million budget. However, Sarah Michelle Gellar's character would not survive to appear in the other sequels. Around this time, Gellar would make her first appearance on Saturday Night Live as the host. I think she's in the Five Timers Club, is she? And she would lend her vocal talents to The Simpsons, King of the Hill, and Small Soldiers, alongside Christina Ricci as those killer Barbies. In the final year of the millennium, 1999, Gellar would team up with Reese Witherspoon, Ryan Felipe, and Selma Blair in the adaptation of Les Lions Bergerons. Cruel Intentions. Critics gave this one mixed reviews, calling it exploitative, but it would go on to nab over $76 million, as well as be nominated for several awards, including Gellar winning Best Female Performance and Best Kiss at the MTV Movie Awards. Oh my gosh, she's kissing a girl! Showing that love knows no bounds, Gellar would have a cameo in her future husband's movie She's All That, and she would finish out 1999 by starring in Simply Irresistible. However, audiences did in fact find it resistible, simply, as this film only managed $4.4 million off a $6 million budget. They thought that Sarah Michelle Gellar and the Supernatural were just a surefire hit, but no, not every time. You gotta work for it. This was followed by another box office bomb, Harvard Man, which didn't even make enough money to afford a semester at Harvard. Sarah Michelle Gellar would bounce back big time with the biggest box office hit of her career in the big screen adaptation of Scooby-Dooby-Doo in 2002. Gellar noted that when she originally signed on, the James Gunn-written screenplay had more adult humor, including a body swap scene between Daphne and Velma that involved the actresses kissing a girl. However, because, money, the decision was made after everyone signed on to the film to make it more family-friendly, even going as far to use CGI in post-production to remove the cleavage from female characters. Critics, however, were not kind to this pooch, calling it a tired live-action update and filled with lame jokes. I hate it when jokes are lame, especially when they're mine. But of course, none of that mattered because the film would go on to win Choice Movie Actress for Gellar at the Teen Choice Awards and, more importantly, Favorite Fart in a Movie at the Kids' Choice Awards. Oh, and it would also make $275.7 million worldwide and spawn a sequel, 2004's Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed, that would garner a less impressive $181.2 million at the box office and would win Worst Remake or Sequel at the Razzie Awards. But who cares? Everyone knows that the Scooby-Doo movies, they're fun. They are what they are, and the cast is absolutely perfect. Every single one of them, especially Sarah Michelle. I mean, I can't imagine anyone else bringing these cartoons to life. Gellar would score another monster hit, returning to the horror genre, with the American-language remake, The Grudge. This horror remake would earn a massive $187.2 million off a minuscule $10 million budget. But those pesky critics, they weren't too impressed, saying that the film lacked any logic and didn't really have any truly scary scenes. I don't know, I remember it being kind of scary. I think there were like some jump scares, something like that. Of course, those horrid reviews don't matter, because all that money at the box office would pave the way for The Grudge 2, the second of the Grudges, and that would hit theaters 2 years later. But Gellar would have a smaller role in the sequel, which is apparently even worse than The Grudge 1, the first of all of the Grudges. Gellar would return to the horror genre with the not very impressive film The Return. She would finish up the year 2006 by appearing in Richard Kelly's highly anticipated epic follow-up to Donnie Darko, Southland Tales, showing off her range as an adult film star. She says that when she met with director Richard Kelly prior to filming, she was very intrigued by the original ideas of the script. Of course, this film, Southland Tales, has gone on to be a cautionary tale for filmmakers who hit it big and then go off the rails with their follow-up films.
Crime suddenly skyrockets for no apparent reason. The world is coming to an end.
But yeah, I've said this before, Southland Tales should have been a masterpiece, but it was just too big for cinema itself. And what's even worse, Southland Tales is probably the last really big major motion picture to feature Sarah Michelle Gellar. The rest of the stuff she does from now on is voice work, TV, and some video on demand stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Some of it's good, let's talk about it.
Issues like abortion, terrorism, crime, poverty, social reform, quantum teleportation, teen horniness, and war.
Gellar would appear in 4 films in the year 2007, The Air I Breathe, Happily Never After, Suburban Girl, and TMNT, which is the only one of the bunch to actually make a profit at the box office, with $95.6 million. In this animated TMNT film, she would voice April O'Neil. And yeah, TMNT is an acronym for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, in case you didn't know. And TMNT is actually way better than it needs to be. Oh, Sarah is a great April O'Neil.
Thank you.
In 2009, we would see Gellar's career finally hit that video-on-demand route, with the film Possession and Veronica Decides to Die. Since 2009, Gellar has mainly focused on voice acting gigs, including some work on American Dad, Season 7, Episode 5, voicing Phyllis, Season 8, Episode 6, voicing Ginny. Also, she plays the 7th sister in Star Wars Rebels in 6 episodes, Season 2, Episodes 5, 10, 11, 18, 21, and 22. And of course, we cannot forget those various roles on 13 episodes of Robot Chicken. And most recently providing her voice to that Kevin Smith-created Masters of the Universe Revelation show, playing one of the lead characters, Teela, as well as returning to her roots on the small screen with the short-lived series Ringer. I think she plays twins. This was in 2011 on the CW, along with appearing opposite the late great legendary Robin Williams in his final television role on the show The Crazy Ones. in 2014, while also taking time to have hilarious cameos in the true TV show Those Who Can't, Episode 4, as well as playing herself in the series finale of The Big Bang Theory, which, yeah, this celebrity cameo, it's truly perfect because SMG is a legend in the eyes of nerds all around the universe.
Is that Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
But yeah, you know what? I think Sarah Michelle Gellar's biggest success is the one she shares with her husband Freddie Prinze Jr., and that is having a private life that has stayed relatively private, and a marriage that has stood the test of time, lasting 20 years, and still going strong, according to Instagram. But yeah, a 20-year marriage in Hollywood, that's like equal to, eternity? Their marriage is a true rarity in Tinseltown. And I gotta be honest, when I first heard about those two doing the Scooby-Dooby-Doo, I first thought, well, that's never gonna last. This is probably a fake relationship organized by the studios in order to promote movies and stuff, and sell magazines. But no, actually, this was true love. It's real, y'all. But yeah, I totally thought that they wouldn't last. And yeah, I was so wrong, and that's like the first time ever. This real-life story is kind of more romantic than most rom-coms and soap operas and even teen slashers.
She says he's her first love. He calls her my girl. Young love.
Sarah Michelle Gellar rose to fame as an ass-kicking vampire slayer and has continued working ever since. You may not always see her, but you've heard her. Plus, her priorities have changed after having children. And actually, recently her kids did a binge watch of Buffy the Vampire Slayer during the government-enforced lockdown. And apparently, her kids absolutely loved the show and know and understand the Buffy mythos better than Sarah does. She says she's officially cool in the eyes of her children. Wow. Sarah Michelle Gellar has actually used her fame for good. She does a lot of work with a lot of charities. And she even released a cookbook in 2017, stirring up fun with food. But yeah, that seems to be her new passion. Baking healthy stuff. She's now a happy, healthy food entrepreneur. At first, she saved us all from vampires, and now she's saving us all from salt and sugar. You know, the stuff that makes things taste good.
It's unbelievable.
But yeah, if you think about it, it's actually kind of perfect. Full circle in a sort of way. She started her career promoting unhealthy food, and now she's promoting healthy food, atoning for her greasy fast food sins. Sarah seems to have done what few in Hollywood can, establish a great work-home life balance, and remains one of the most beautiful and talented actresses out there. So nobody should give a f*** about what the f*** happened to Sarah Michelle Gellar, because she's doing just fine. Happily ever after. And all this despite being banned from McDonald's. His teen heartthrob status and his intellectual side had the tabloids calling him a smart throb. But did Jonathan Taylor Thomas make a smart move when he decided to walk away from the spotlight? Jonathan Taylor Thomas was so famous that the whole world simply knew him by his initials, JTT, which stands for Jonathan Taylor Thomas. JTT has been called a symbol of purity. He's relatable but has an obvious destiny for greatness. Everyone thought this cute little cub prince was gonna grow up to be the king of Hollywood. But after conquering the worlds of TV and film, Jonathan Taylor Thomas politely abandoned his kingdom in search for something more. More than just hit sitcoms and blockbuster classics. More than just immortality as a poster on a little girl's bedroom in the 90s. More than anyone could imagine. Child stars come and go all the time, forgotten as soon as their 15 minutes are over. But there seems to be a mysterious intrigue surrounding the enigma that is the life and career of Jonathan Taylor Thomas. He's so normal, it's weird.
Hey, life's more than a game. It's an adventure. I'm Jonathan Taylor Thomas asking you to make the right decision right now.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas always grabs headlines whenever he emerges from his private habitat. He has gone from teen heartthrob to adult recluse. But not in a weird Howard Hughes kind of way. More like a I'm too cool for Hollywood kind of way. And by the way, in case you didn't know, my legal birth name is Taylor James Johnson, in case you don't read the credits at the end. And I, Taylor James Johnson, have a personal confession to make. Jonathan Taylor Thomas is a major reason why I go by all three names. He did it, so why can't I? And being a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white boy in the 90s, a lot of the kids on the playground would call me Jonathan Taylor Thomas, for some reason. And still, to this day, I am haunted by that tragic backstory. The kids, they would surround me and point their fingers, chanting, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. And I'm not sure if they were trying to insult me or compliment me. But it doesn't matter, because one does not get cooler than Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Yo!
Does he regret walking away from fame? Or has he found happiness elsewhere in life? This and many other JTT-related questions will be answered. Questions like this. What the f*** happened to Jonathan Taylor Thomas? But to truly understand what the f*** happened to Jonathan Taylor Thomas, we must start at the beginning. And the beginning began when he was born on his birthday, 1981, in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. But he was not born as JTT. No, it was JTW. His birth name is Jonathan Taylor Weiss. Young Jonathan soon found himself appearing on several commercials for brands such as Kellogg's, Burger King, and Mattel. At 9 years old, JTT would graduate to larger roles, appearing as Greg Brady's son, Kevin, in the short-lived Brady Bunch spin-off, The Bradys. And when you think Jonathan Taylor Thomas, you think In Living Color, right? Well, you should, because he appeared in 3 episodes of the popular sketch show, most notably in a Home Alone spoof involving Michael Jackson. In 1987, Thomas would voice the lead character Spot in the children's animated show, The Adventures of Spot. Nobody f***s with Spot. Then came one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, in the 90s at least, Home Improvement. In 1991, Thomas would land the role that would make him a household name, when he was cast as the wise-cracking middle child to Tim the Toolman Taylor and his wife Jill. Many actors auditioned for the role of Randy, but Thomas was cast because the casting people thought he looked like he could be related to Tim Allen. But the best part about this character of Randy is that you can tell that he has a similar sense of humor as his father, even though the two often clash. Tim Allen is always like, Randy, why are you such a wise ass? And he's like, I learned it from you, Dad! The audience could always rely on Jonathan Taylor Thomas to deliver the most perfect smart alecky line ever. Every time. In every single episode. He got that laugh track working overtime, let me tell ya. Whenever the writers were like, hey, we need something funny to happen here, they were like, how about Jonathan Taylor Thomas makes a wise-cracking remark? And they were like, that should work. And it always worked.
If a guy's walking down the street with his fly down, if I can't come up with a joke, I know you'll back me up.
Well, I mean, you gotta make the fly joke.
That's right, you gotta make the fly joke. Hey, pal, you know your fly's down?
It's cheaper than air conditioning.
Why do you have your hands behind your backs?
Just a little change of pace from keeping them in front, you know.
Hey, Mom, you think I have a chance at winning the costume contest? I don't think I have enough brains oozing out of my head.
I didn't know you had any brains in your head.
But there was some controversy when Thomas left the show in 1998 during the final season. I think he made it like 2 episodes in. And he had a good reason for leaving. He wanted to focus on his studies, his academics, his education, on his brain, on his thinker, on his noggin. But many people were very confused why someone would leave such a successful show. But education was important to JTT, and he wanted to be surrounded by books, not cameras. It was rumored that Tim Allen was very upset at JTT's decision to leave. Tim Allen was like, huh? And yeah, I guess, your education is more important than sitcoms, even if it's like a huge sitcom. I mean, yeah, it's his decision. Do what you want, man.
How's Mom?
Not too bad. She finally stopped saying, "Boys, whatever you do, don't turn out to be like your father."
But all the bad blood dissipated over time, and JTT came back to do a reunion photo shoot for Entertainment Weekly in 2011. And like I said, Home Improvement will go down and has gone down as one of the best sitcoms of all time, at least in the 90s. And during its entire 8-season run, the show was always in the top 10 of the Nielsen's rating system thing. If you care about that Nielsen's rating system thing.
Slow down, just let me have that thing.
Oh, boy.
Okay, what's that?
Sumo wrestling from Japan.
Say it. Oh, now that's better. Opera.
Thomas's most high-profile film came by way of the all-time highest-grossing 2D animated film ever made, The Lion King, where he provided the voice of young Simba. And this is a wonderful Disney-fied version of Shakespeare's Hamlet. Jonathan Taylor Thomas provides the perfect voice for young Simba. Perfect casting. But he didn't do the singing, but that's okay. And this was the first time I ever realized that the voice coming out of the animated animal was a celebrity. A celebrity that I knew. Because I liked Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and I liked lions, and I liked cartoons, and I liked Disney, and this movie was all of that. The film pulled in $968.5 million worldwide. And in terms of tickets sold, this film still ranks as the biggest animated movie in the last 50 years, with over 74 million tickets sold. And I know my parents bought quite a few of those tickets.
That was it? Do it again.
The Lion King received universal praise, with Siskel and Ebert, the guys with the thumbs, giving it 2 thumbs up. Although on the program they did say the film is good, not great. But you know what, Siskel and Ebert, it is great, so you're wrong. In 2016, the film was selected for the United States National Film Registry as being culturally and historically and aesthetically significant. And I agree, it is significant in all of those categories.
Slimy, yet satisfying.
Then in 1994 came Poko. Thomas would voice the main character in the North American Disney-released version of this Japanese animated film. You know, for all those people that only watch movies in English. And just like with Simba, he does a fine job bringing this animated character to life, using only the power of his voice. So yeah, 1995 to 1998 was prime JTT years. As his star continued to rise and teenage girls' hearts continued to swoon, Thomas would make the jump from supporting sitcom character to lead actor movie star. He became the man of the house. Speaking of being the man of a house, his next film was titled Man of the House. Thomas would star alongside Chevy Chase and Farrah Fawcett in this live-action Disney comedy about a boy coming to terms with his mom marrying Chevy Chase. And this film was shot while Thomas was on his summer break from Home Improvement, so he didn't really get a break, which was very exhausting on the young actor. The film was panned by critics who called it weak. But in 1995, I thought it was great. It had hilarious comedic moments. I remember JTT making a joke about his pet squirrel named Numbnuts. And right there, that was high quality comedy for me in 1995. Good old 1995. And it has action. Chevy Chase's character is like chased by the mafia or something, and just, like a little side plot. And the politically incorrect tribe of Boy Scouts dressed up as indigenous peoples have to fight off the mobsters or whatever they are. And it was like, wow, yeah, this was my cup of tea. And I actually rewatched it recently for research when I was making What the F Happened to Chevy Chase. And I clicked on the Disney Plus, and I typed in my cousin's girlfriend's password, and I watched Man of the House, and you know what? I still kind of enjoyed it. And many people enjoyed this film, actually. It managed to make $40 million at the domestic box office.
Well, if you were really clever, you'd wrap us up in wet rawhide, so when it dried out, it'd mash up all our bones and squeeze our internal organs out through our orifices like a tube of toothpaste. I saw it on America's Most Wanted.
Let me tell you something, Sturgis. This kid is sick.
Then came 1995, the next following year. Thomas would next play a different Tom, Sawyer, in the Disney-fied retelling of this classic tale, Tom and Huck, opposite the late great Brad Renfro. And these two young men have great chemistry together. This movie right here, Tom and Huck, it really helped me get through a couple book reports back in school. It's like the Cliff Notes on VHS, But it is a very watered down, but still fun retelling of the Mark Twain classic. And this movie right here at times is pretty dark and scary, at least for a kid in the 90s. And the perfectly politically incorrect villain, Injun Joe, is absolutely terrifying as he hunts down Tom and Huck. Thomas pulled double duty on this film, shooting this and Home Improvement simultaneously, at the same time, back to back, in a row, right after each other. Which must have been very difficult for the young thespian because this Alabama shoot was plagued with many problems, including the intense muggy heat, relentless bugs, and some kind of mulch that apparently made several cast and crew members sick. Horrible weather throughout the production, including tornadoes. And I'm sure the ghost of Mark Twain found all these production troubles to be rather humorous. But listen here, ghost of Mark Twain, not everything's funny. Because of this intense work schedule, Jonathan Taylor Thomas would suffer from severe migraines, which is probably one of the many reasons why he slowed down his acting as he turned into a grown-up person. JTT even went on to later say that he was heading to an early grave if he would have kept up this pace, acting out entire scenes with full-blown migraine in his head, and like he's just a child, you guys. But he was still delivering amazing professional performances, so wow, way to go, JTT. So yeah, Tom and Huck, it was planned for a big Christmas release back in 1995, but on its opening weekend it only made it to 9th place at the box office. It would finish its theatrical run with only $23.9 million. Which sounds like a lot if you don't have $23.9 million, but it's not that much. Critics did not care for Tom or Huck, calling this movie a joyless lump, saying that this Disney version was too scrubbed and polished to resemble the original Mark Twain characters. But I just watched it on Disney Plus, for research, and I liked it, it's still good. So whatever. Thomas would continue updating classic IPs by appearing as the title character in the movie, The Adventures of Pinocchio. At times, the Jim Henson effects are pretty spectacular and charming, but at other times they're very creepy, like horror movie creepy. I remember seeing this as a kid in the good old 90s and being slightly disappointed. I was hoping for something more fun, you know? But that wooden face, it stays with you. It's unforgettable. But not really in a good way.
It's happened. I finally lost my mind.
Sadly, this was another failure in Thomas's filmography as it opened up in the 8th place at the box office and finished its theatrical run with only $15 million against a $25 million budget. Although critics appreciated the visuals of the film, they felt that it lacked the same magic as that cartoon version that everybody knows. Then came the Oz Kids Collection in 1996. Thomas would once again put those skilled vocals to use when he voiced Scarecrow Jr. in the animated children's program The Oz Kids. Thomas would next appear in the 1997 kinda true life story, Wild America. This is the story of 3 brothers in the 60s who embark across America to capture all the greatest wildlife on camera, and all of whom grow up to become famous wildlife documentarians later on, in real life. And I don't give a crap about what anyone says about this movie. To me, this movie right here, Wild America, is perfect. I, too, was a young, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white boy who loved nature and filmmaking, so to me, in 1997, movies did not get any better than this. There's action, adventure, animals, explosions, more animals, and fart jokes. Sadly, most every other human did not share my excitement for this movie. They just focused on its flaws. This film was yet another critical and commercial failure for Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and it only made $7.3 million. Roger Ebert, the film critic guy with the thumbs, absolutely hated the inaccuracies and the plot holes involving Mother Nature. It was not wild about Wild America.
The cave is filled with hibernating bears, in August, of course, who wake up. Well, either the bears are hibernating or they're not. Let's say they are. It's supposed to be the middle of summer. When does it get warm enough that they don't need to hibernate? Wild America is a film that means well, and children may enjoy its animal hijinks. The actors are likable, a lot of the photography is good to look at, but it all just plain seemed phony to me, as if they'd taken a nucleus of real events and inflated them into tall tales.
Thomas would follow in the footsteps of his TV dad and appear in a Disney Christmas film called I'll Be Home for Christmas. And this is one of those movies that every year, every family gathers around and watches. Actually, no, that doesn't happen. Nobody watches this. This film was not destined to be a Christmas classic. This was yet another commercial and box office dud, with those pesky critics calling it a Christmas turkey, and saying that not one parent or child will find any merriment in this mess. And the box office would agree. This one made $12.2 million on a $30 million budget. Ow! Then in 1999, there was a film called Speedway Junkie, and this was absolutely, completely different than anything Jonathan Taylor Thomas had ever done before. This one was produced by Gus Van Sant, and if you know what that means, you know that this is absolutely not a family-friendly Disney flick. JTT wanted to challenge himself as an artist with darker, edgier material. Sure, why not? But I don't think the world was ready for him to grow up. This film right here was screened in various film festivals, yet failed to find distribution, until 2001 when it was given a very limited theatrical release. Then it was dumped onto the DVD, Was this the beginning of a dark, grittier, independent stage for JTT's acting career? No, not really.
So, you completely straight or what? Steven's bisexual. Guys pay more. Simple fact of life, Johnny. Buy him something, and he'll have sex.
Thomas's next film would also be, as of today, his final theatrical film. A Christian-themed film called Walking Across Egypt in 1999. This was an independently produced endeavor and is said to be a very well-intentioned movie but weakly conceived. Nice try. But yeah, 1999, that was the last time Jonathan Taylor Thomas's face ever appeared on a silver screen.
I don't want to go back to that place.
He almost had a big comeback in that year, 1999. Thomas was offered the lead role in American Pie, but he turned it down, disappointing teenage girls and freshly made pies around the world. This could have been a huge comeback for JTT, launching him off into a successful acting career, you know, like Jason Biggs. Or it could have been really awkward to see this young, innocent lad stuck in such R-rated adult situations. I don't know, what do you think about American Pie starring Jonathan Taylor Thomas? Your comment in the comments.
Well, we'll just tell your mother that we ate it all.
Thomas would next be seen in the Showtime movie Common Ground, which is an anthology movie with 3 short stories that all dealt with the theme of homosexuality in America. Thomas would appear in the second story titled Mr. Roberts, playing a student who's afraid to come out of the closet. The year 2000 would see Thomas return to voice acting with The Tangerine Bear, Home in Time for Christmas, as well as Timothy Tweedle, the first Christmas elf, and 6 episodes as Tyler Tucker in The Wild Thornberrys. He would also pop up on an episode of Ally McBeal. At this time, Thomas was enrolled at Harvard University, where he was studying philosophy and history, and his acting career took a backseat to his studies. Then, in 2003, after a 2-year hiatus to focus on school, Thomas would lend his vocals to The Simpsons. Season 14, Episode 18, episode titled Dude, Where's My Ranch? And between 2002 and 2004, Jonathan Taylor Thomas would appear in 2 episodes of the CW's popular Superman show, Smallville, playing Ian Randall, a meta-human with the power to duplicate himself. There's so many JTTs everywhere, oh my god! Just add more Jonathan Taylor and you add more Jonathan flavor. That's what I always say. Also in 2004, Thomas would appear as the hunky geek Jeremy in 3 episodes of 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. Then the next year was 2005, and Jonathan Taylor Thomas's youthful looks landed him a guest spot on Veronica Mars. Jonathan Taylor Thomas could next be seen in a short film. This one was called Tilt-A-Whirl. Thomas would again lend those silky vocals to the animation world in the Hong Kong-produced 3D animated film, Through the Mobius Strip.
Good. Then let's take care of business.
The film premiered at the 2005 Cannes Film Festival, where it received generally positive reviews with praise for the animation. Then came the year 2006 with another short film. This one was called The Extra. Jonathan Taylor Thomas would appear alongside the Whose Line Is It Anyway genius Ryan Stiles in a short comedy film about life as a background performer. Then around 2013, proving absolutely no bad blood between Thomas and Tim Allen over his decision to leave Home Improvement, Thomas would appear in 4 episodes of Allen's other successful sitcom, Last Man Standing, even appearing as Randy in 1 episode as guest star Patricia Richardson's son. And this reaction right here from Tim Allen is genuine shock, as he had no idea that Jonathan Taylor Thomas was going to appear in the scene. Tim Allen was like, "Who?" Jonathan Taylor Thomas would return as an actual guest star in 3 more episodes. And he would even step behind the camera to direct a few episodes of the show as well. That's right, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, director.
Hi.
I'm Mike Baxter.
Hey.
Man, you look familiar.
And therein lies Jonathan Taylor Thomas's ultimate goal. When he was younger, people would often call him the next Macaulay Culkin. But he would say that he didn't want to be the next Macaulay Culkin. He'd rather be the next Ron Howard, a child star who successfully transitioned into directing. So yeah, we could only hope for the best that Jonathan Taylor Thomas gets more opportunities to bring his directing talents to the screen.
I got used to the firecrackers. I had to. They said every good movie needs an explosion.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas always seemed to have a firm grasp and understanding of what fame really is. At the age of 14, he said, "I think most fallen child stars weren't prepared for the end. I mean, it's not the end of your life. You can't base your whole life around one thing." Those are some wise words, JTT. JTT hated being a heartthrob. JTT hated the magazine covers, and JTT hated being called JTT. Sorry. Even with the public infatuation, Thomas has kept his personal life very private, never really being splashed across the tabloids with any significant others, which led to many rumors about JTT's sexuality. And Jay Leno decided to ask him about that one in an incredibly awkward interview.
No, I mean, they're rumors, and you should always be kind of careful with that internet stuff.
Yeah, but you're not, are you gay?
No. I'm
You know, it's fine.
not.
You know, if you want to come out, it's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to have a dramatic breakthrough.
Some reports have said that Thomas's mom, who was also his manager, was a bit overbearing and always around, exerting a level of control over him and his career that bordered on unhealthy codependency. While other reports say that she was not around to control him, but to protect him and stay a well-rounded human being who didn't let the fame get to his head. And judging by the person that he grew up to be, I'd say that Jonathan Taylor Thomas was raised right. His parents probably knew of the dark side of being a child star in Hollywood, and they were not gonna let their little JTT fall victim to that. And considering that many child stars end up taking that dark and sometimes deadly path, JTT managed to stay out of that mess, at least from what we know. After graduating from Harvard in 2002, Jonathan Taylor Thomas returned to school, graduating from Columbia University in 2010, under his original name, Jonathan Taylor Weiss. Rare sightings of Jonathan Taylor Thomas have almost become chupacabra-like. It seems that when he pops up, the world just stops and takes notice. Like in 2013 when TMZ caught him. I can't believe I'm saying this, but let's see what TMZ has to say.
Where's that guy?
Is that JTT?
OMFPG-13, it's JTT!
Who?
Jonathan Taylor Thomas is so private with his private personal life that he makes national headlines when he is photographed for the first time in 8 years. Just out walking his dog in Los Angeles. But yeah, this guy, all he had to do was go outside and walk his dogs, and that became front page news. Unlike his child star contemporaries, Jonathan Taylor Thomas doesn't have any public social media accounts. So you can't friend him, you can't like him, you can't share him, you can't tweet him, you can't poke him. It's just another way he keeps his private life private. And we should respect that. RESPECT. Find out what it means to JTT. In a way, his sense of humor and his films can be considered a lost art. And Pauly Shore was truly a pioneer of that particular genre. You know, those goofball comedies starring a flawed yet lovable loser who saves the day. In the 90s, that comedic formula made superstars out of Jim Carrey, Ben Stiller, Chris Farley, and Adam Sandler. But I think we can all agree that there is another name that belongs on that list. A name that is the ultimate in 90s comedy. So much so that he hasn't made a film since the 90s. It's time we find out just what the f*** happened to Pauly Shore. Before we begin, I just want to say thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, click that bell to get those notifications. Now it's time to get back to the show. But to truly understand what the f*** happened to Pauly Shore, we must begin at the beginning, and the beginning began when he was born on his birthday, 1968, Los Angeles, California. Pauly Shore's parents, Sammy and Mitzi Shore, were the legendary owners of the world-renowned Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. The pair would divorce in 1974, with Mitzi becoming the sole owner. Every comedian that you've ever known and loved cut their teeth at the Comedy Store, and they all loved Mitzi Shore, Pauly's mom, who could make or break your career with just the nod of her head. With that type of legacy behind him, Shore really had no other path in life. He would begin his own stand-up career at just 17 years old, and with his mother's connections, he was mentored by none other than the late great Sam Kinison. Comedians are used to creating slightly heightened versions of themselves as their stage persona. But Pauly Shore took it to a whole new level by creating his Weasel character, who spoke like a burned-out surfer dude, and this allowed his comedic timing to be like genius. The pauses he took in his sentences, they're hilarious. I don't even want to try to do it, because I won't do it justice. Just is. Yeah, see?
And then we'll pass it NYC, Russia, under the Globich, California, and back to Dallas so we get to keep the roaches.
After bit parts in shows like 21 Jump Street, St. Elsewhere, and Married with Children, Pauly Shore would rise to superstardom amongst 90s youth when he was hired as an MTV VJ. Shore would quickly become one of MTV's biggest personalities, if not the biggest, with his unique vocabulary that parents didn't quite understand, and those young people, they loved it. And this was at the time when MTV, music television, actually played music on television. And it was like the biggest thing in the world. And honestly, I believe it is all thanks to Pauly Shore. And the music. Pauly really captured the pop cultural zeitgeist of that time. And it felt like he was truly unstoppable. And, for a time, he was. This dude was at the top of the world. And you can tell he loved every second of it. His enthusiasm and just his funness, it was so contagious. Mr. Shore would host his own show called Totally Pauly, and would also serve as the host for the channel's annual spring break. And he would even release his own music video called Lisa Lisa the One I Adore. Pauly Shore could do it all. And he was doing it all. The early 1990s belonged to Shore. If you were 10 to 25 years old, Pauly Shore was your comedic hero, and he was able to parlay that fandom into a film career that began in 1992 with the hit caveman comedy, Encino Man, opposite a very fresh-faced Brendan Fraser. It is a truly wonderful film, but critics hated it, but the film wasn't for them. Encino Man would earn $40 million at the box office off of just a $7 million budget. And if you're like me, this movie has stuck with you ever since, as most of us cannot walk past an icy machine without thinking of that iconic line, wheezing the juice.
Link and I are cruising the mountain, bro, and we figure we's a little juice.
No, wheezing the juice. Wheeze the juice. No, wheezing the juice.
And this could be really good news or really bad news. As of recently, May 2022, Pauly Shore has said that there have been discussions with Disney Plus to unfreeze this franchise for an Encino Man 2. Sure, go ahead, but don't f*** it up. After a small role in 1992's Kid and Play classic, Class Act, Pauly Shore would return to theaters with the hilarious flick Son-in-Law in 1993. If Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is number 1 on the list of Thanksgiving-related movies, Son-in-Law is truly number 2. Critics again didn't quite get it, saying that Pauly Shore's character lacked likability, but it turned into another solid hit for Mr. Shore, with nearly $40 million off an $8 million budget. Pauly Shore was riding high with his Weasel character, successfully transitioning to the big screen with a loyal fan base eager to see what is next. At the time, Pauly Shore was under contract with Disney, and against the direction of his managers and agents, he signed on to star in the comedy In the Army Now in 1994, a film that would see him chop off his trademark curly locks. Critics would call the film a shameless rip-off of Bill Murray's Stripes, and audiences would start to slip, with this one not being able to crack $30 million at the box office. But true Pauly Shore fans still love this film, even though he doesn't have his curly locks. On TV, he would have a successful voice gig on the hit show Bobby's World, and he would appear as himself on an episode of the legendary HBO hit The Larry Sanders Show. Theatrically, he would have a slight bounce back in 1995 when he would enjoy a Leaning Tower of Cheesa in one of my personal favorite Disney animated films, a Goofy movie. He would play the hilarious friend who stole every scene he was in. A Goofy movie wouldn't be the biggest hit in its day, but it gained in popularity as the years have gone by. And oddly enough, Pauly Shore would go uncredited for his voice work in this film, but you could all tell it was Pauly. However, he would receive some credit when he returned to the film's direct-to-video sequel, an extremely goofy movie, in the year 2000. Gosh.
Slurpage.
As can tend to happen when you have a few money makers under your belt, your next movie gets a bigger budget. But that can be a double-edged sword, as TriStar Pictures would shell out $21 million to make Jury Duty, which has a rare 0% on those tomatoes at Rotten.com. Roger Ebert, the guy with the thumbs, said in his review of the film that Pauly Shore was the cinematic equivalent to long fingernails drawn very slowly on a gigantic blackboard. Yikes. The great thumbed one went on to say that Pauly Shore's appeal must be limited to people whose self-esteem is so damaged that they find humor or at least relief in encountering a character less successful than themselves. Yikes! Well, I thought it was pretty funny, so sue me. Get it? Jury Duty? Sue me? I don't care what you think, that's hilarious. Case closed. Well, anyway, Pauly Shore would win the coveted Worst Actor trophy at the Razzie Awards, and the film would fail to make back its budget, with just $17 million at the box office.
You're out of order! No! You're out of order! This whole court is out of order!
And then came Biodome in 1996. And surprisingly enough, this film would go on to essentially kill Pauly Shore's theatrical career. Although today, Biodome is looked at as a masterpiece, a cult classic, with many people discovering it years later and falling in love with these wacky characters in this wacky dome. When it was released in January 1996, it landed with a resounding thud, only pulling in $13.4 million. Critics universally hated it, with it being one of only 11 movies to score a 1 out of 100 Metacritic score, and Shore would go on to win his second Razzie for Worst Actor. So yeah, Biodome, even though everyone loves it now, it was a huge failure at the time. And because of that, it all seemed to fade away. Pauly Shore's star began to fall. But he would still guest star on episodes of Beverly Hills 90210, followed by his network sitcom on Fox called Pauly that only ran for 7 episodes. He would continue performing stand-up, though, while popping up in various projects like Pamela Anderson's show VIP. He was in the dark reimagined reboot of the show Fantasy Island. He appeared on an episode of King of the Hill, Futurama, Nash Bridges, and we cannot forget 2 rockin' music videos for Limp Bizkit in Together Now and Break Stuff. Those were my jams, yo. But the diminishing returns of his theatrical movies meant that Pauly Shore was destined for the direct-to-video bin at your local supermarket. With voice roles in 2 Casper movies, Casper: A Spirited Beginning and Casper Meets Wendy.
The Sniveler has sniveled his finest snivel.
He was also in The Curse of Inferno in 1997, The Princess and the Barrio Boy in 2000, and the truly awful parody, The Bogus Witch Project.
Does anyone have any tissue?
In later years, Shore would reflect on his time. He says that he had a rough time accepting that his star had faded, that people had grew tired of his shtick. But, that happens with every hilarious thing. It can't be hilarious forever. Pauly Shore has said that for 10 years of his life, he absolutely loved getting up and going to film movies. But it was tough for him when fame went away. Suddenly, his name wasn't on the top of the poster. Suddenly, he was kind of just a cameo. He would appear in the Dr. Dre Snoop Dogg comedy The Wash before stepping behind the camera to write, produce, and direct his very first feature film, the mockumentary Pauly Shore is Dead, that featured many of his friends in cameo roles as themselves. The film received decent, if not overwhelmingly positive reviews, but of course it was a box office bomb, pulling in $11,000. That's right, $11,000.
Fuck! Fuck my head! Oh, shit!
2 years later, his career would get a slight bump when he appeared as himself on episodes of Entourage, but the bulk of his on-screen output over the years have been guest starring roles on shows such as Hawaii Five-0, Comedy Bang Bang, and Workaholics. Also popping up in small roles in films such as Bucky Larson, Born to be a Star, Sandy Wexler, and How It Ends in the year 2021. Even headlining some films every so often, such as Opposite Day, Adopted, and Guest House in 2020. Sorry, I mean 2020! Then came something called Pinocchio, a true story. What? Okay, so let's say you were casting Pinocchio movie, and you needed someone to voice a wooden puppet boy. Who do you get? Well, of course you get Pauly Shore. Right? I don't know. This is either the best idea ever or the worst idea. So I'm sure half of the people who are watching this movie are just watching it because they want to hear Pauly Shore's voice come out of a Pinocchio. Like, what? I don't know, but the director stands by his decision and says that Pauly Shore is Pinocchio. And yeah, I guess that's true. You can say that about the real Pauly Shore. He just wanted to be a real boy. And he was real. So real that he took over the world. But maybe he was too real. He couldn't stand being a puppet anymore. He cut his strings and did his own thing. But you gotta respect.
Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see.
Pauly Shore says that his life was always tied to the family business, the world-renowned Comedy Store, and that in later years of his mother's life, he was her sole caregiver until her passing in 2018. In 2020, he left the city he called home his entire life, Los Angeles, and moved to Las Vegas, where he crafted a new one-man show called Stick with Dancing. Funny stories from my childhood. And this title is truly hilarious because Stick with Dancing is exactly what his mother told him when he was auditioning for the Comedy Store. So yeah, Stick with Dancing, funny stories from my childhood. That garnered very strong reviews for its mix of earnest storytelling and traditional stand-up humor. Funny stuff, it'll make you laugh out loud.
How'd I do, Ma? Stick with the dancing.
Pauly Shore may not have ever hit the heights of the other 90s comedy icons, but he had his moment, and he did everything he could in that moment. And if you were of a certain age in the early 90s, or had a certain sense of humor, Mr. Shore could do no wrong. And he spoke in a way that many of us had never heard before. His films were never critical darlings, but for a brief moment in time, they were solid moneymakers, with many only gaining in popularity as the years went on. Pauly Shore was so funny he was ahead of his time. The lull in his career took a toll on him, but he never gave up. He continued working steadily for the past 30 years. And you know what? His stand-up shows are still selling out nationwide. And because of his family and his life experiences, many look to Pauly Shore for words of wisdom. I know it seems strange, but this dude has some interesting insight on things like showbiz, comedy, and, life. He's always a fascinating podcast guest. Everyone wants some wise words from the Weasel. And you know what? Pauly Shore doesn't really need Encino Man 2 or Biodome 2. Like I said, the dude still sells out shows, excelling in stand-up. His true calling, going back to where it all began. Stand-up comedy is in Pauly Shore's blood, and he has a loyal fan base that will continue to show up for him for years to come. And that is what the f*** happened to Pauly Shore.
I'll be back.